Good day, friends. Welcome back to this week's video in the Ground Up ADU build series. We're going to go over all the exterior facade. I'm going to talk about house wrap. We're going to talk about concrete lap siding, trim. I go in depth and teach you how to hang a window. We're also going to hang an exterior door. Gutters are going up. This is a great video this week. Let's get right to it. We got Barnsey on the roll. His only job is to keep the roll tight and also level with our control line up top. I'm going behind him with the slap hammer and just smoothing everything out after I tack the very top in. Just smooth it out. We're trying to put as few as staples as possible to get the job done. Any staple is a potential penetration point, but if we don't put enough and we get some heavy wind nights before we get the siding on, we'll show up and this stuff will be blown away. So trying to find the balance. So we could use a Tyvek product, or this is a Henry's rain stop. It's got a built-in kind of corrugated quilted fabric. Stuff doesn't stick to it very well, but I think it gives a better barrier than the Tyvek material, and it's a little bit cheaper. These are 9-foot rolls with 125 linear feet. Moving over to the back ADU, I'm going to demo the whole process of installing one of these vinyl windows. The first thing I'm going to do every time after I pull the stickers off of the window is remove the screens. If you don't pull the screens out, I promise you they'll get damaged. Not just during install, but when you're painting, you'll get overspray on them. If you leave them inside the building, sap will find a way to drip onto them. So pull the screens out, get them off site or in a shed or in an attic somewhere where they won't get destroyed. After that, I'm going to cut my hole. And it helps to have a nice sharp razor blade. I'm cutting a 45 on each side. This is going to get flashed and I'll fold it back down over the window. So I give it one little tack there. And then from here, I'm going to cut right down the center to my side sills. And I can use my finger as a reference point to find it. And there's a lot of different ways to flash a window, to install a window. This is what works really well in our region. And I know that because I've installed hundreds of windows, and I also maintain the houses that I install them on. And I know that I haven't had much damage due to weather. So this system works good in the Pacific Northwest. Next, I'm gonna take the slap hammer and keep a nice tight look here. Some people keep the house wrap all the way on the inside. I like to cut it off really short so the expanding foam that's going to come from the inside around our jamb will seal between the actual trimmer stud and the paper. So if there's ever any airflow that gets behind this paper, it's not going to infiltrate into the house. Same thing on this side. Keep it tight. We don't want to overdo it. Nice sharp razor blade helps. The next step that I like to do on a window application is put a nice 3/8 bead of caulking right across the sill. And what that's doing is it's going to give us a little bit of an angle. So if water ever does get behind the piece of vinyl, it's going to flow out. So this is actually a dam going across. Put it in about 1 inch. And then I'm going to fold my sill wrap over it without pushing it down. Again, when that hardens, it's going to give us just a little bit of a dam edge to repel the water. The next thing I do is make sure my window fits, and I've already measured it and confirmed that it's square. I like to put a bead of caulking all the way around. Some people put it on the flange of the window. I like it on the edge of the wall. Across the bottom, I'm just gonna do stitches, so if water ever gets behind there, it can drain out with gravity. A nice consistent bead is important. If we have breaks in the bead, that's a break in the sill. If this was somewhere that was more exposed, if it wasn't under cover, I would put one of these prefabricated corner flashings in. But since this is under a covered front porch, I'm not worried about it. Next step is to seat the window. Before I push it against the house, I'm gonna go back and forth and just center it. Because once I slam it into that silicone, I don't want to move it. People use different things. I use a 2-inch hot dipped galvanized roofing nail with a really thin head, and that works very well for me. So that's what I like. I'm just gonna tack each side, and then I'll throw the plumb stick on it, and we're gonna level the sill first, and then I'll plumb the sides. So whenever possible, especially with a heavier window, make sure they're closed so when you pick them up, they don't shift. But after we have it simply tacked, I'm gonna grab my levels. I use these German Stabila levels, and the first and most important part of this process is to level the sill. So we want the sill level, and we also want it straight. We don't want any waves in it. And in a big vinyl window, you can get that. So I've got it tacked. In the corners, our sill is level, and then I'm also gonna take the plumb stick on the sides. Plumb is side to side, so we want our sill level, and then we want the sides of our windows plumb. And if the sill is level and the sides are plumb, the top is gonna be level as well. And then the last thing that I wanna check while I just have a couple of tacks in it is how do our windows flow, and how does the reveal look at the bottom of the window. In other words, if I turn it, go to close it almost all the way down, and the sash is not parallel with the bottom of the window frame, I probably have to do some adjustments. So this window actually went in pretty nice. It helps to have a really level subsill. So we framed these a 1/2 inch over all the way around. So this is a 4030 window, which means it's 4 feet wide and 3 feet deep, and then the window itself is a 1/2 inch smaller than that. You can't probably see it on the video, but I have a nail here, a nail here, and a nail here, and then I'll probably put one in the center of this sash to hold it, and one in the center here to keep that vinyl from getting wobbly on a hot day. And then I always like to put a couple across the top. Some windows will say don't nail the header, and that's just if the roof isn't stacked yet. But you can always follow the manufacturer instructions on the back side of the sticker. So I'm gonna finish nailing this off, and then we'll cover the flashing detail. As I nail these off, it's going to be squishing out the caulking. And I just like to smooth that over. Flashing is gonna cover all of that, but I do wanna get the excess off. So our trim is gonna wanna set flat against the wall. We don't want a bunch of lumpy, hard areas on the side of our window fin. So I just went inside the ADU and I worked both of the single hung windows. They both run really smooth. They shut properly, they latch, and now I'm gonna do a quick flashing. So when we're doing flashing details on a window, again, there's 100 different ways to do it. This is what I do in this region, and I know it works because I still have houses I built 20 years ago with this same system, and they don't leak at the windows. With that being said, flash is all about gravity. We wanna start at the bottom. I use this fortified flash material, and it's tar based, and it's really sticky, so you don't wanna let it fold back on itself like duct tape, or else you'll be fighting it the whole way. So I hang it over approximately 4 inches. And for our top flash, we're gonna get up on the ladder and tuck this piece in just underneath our house wrap where it's already pre-folded up. That's why we cut the 45 on the edges and fold it up out of our way. And then I simply pull the staple out, let it fall down. And then you can buy Tyvek tape, which is super expensive, but I just use a small piece of this flashing. And what's nice about this is when you puncture it with a nail, it's self-filling. And then on the other side, we have our little piece of tape to cover up that seam. Now everything's flash, so if water ever gets on top of the Tyvek or behind it, it's gonna roll over that piece of flashing, come down, roll over this piece of flashing, and run out down the wall behind the siding. That's a simple window flashing detail. Another thing I would pay particular attention to is not nailing near the weep holes. So every different manufacturer of window is gonna have some type of weep hole where water or condensation buildup on the glass or in the frame has to exit. And in this case, on these mill guard windows, it's right here. So I don't want to put staples here when I'm nailing my trim on. I don't want to put any nails in this zone just because water is always going to be coming out of that. So we can just help ourselves out by just calling this a no nail zone. A question I often get is, Derek, how do you kill mold within your framing structure? When we put up a building, we usually frame with green Douglas fir, and the moisture in the wood, usually from the stack, from the mill, can build up in certain areas, especially in the middle where there's no airflow, and we'll get a little bit of mold on our framing members. What I like to do, a super simple solution, is vinegar. So if we're trying to kill mold spores on a hard surface like plastic or a Formica countertop, we can use bleach. Usually about a 10% bleach solution is what I would use. But if there's a porous material like wood, I'm just gonna use pure vinegar. So I take a $25 spray bottle here that you would put a weed killer in, and then I'm gonna go around the ADU here, and anywhere that it's black, I'm just gonna adjust the nozzle into a nice tight stream and spray that down. And I'll do it a couple times over the next week as we're drying this unit out. Super affordable way to kill mold. It works well. You'll talk to a lot of old framers that say, oh, that mold's fine. As soon as the wood dries out, it won't grow, which is probably true in most cases, but I like to do everything I can, especially when it's quick and cheap, to kill the mold before we cover it up. As with any other step in the construction process, we try to do the whole process all at once to stay efficient. So I'm gonna go around both ADUs, and I'm looking for little areas like this where you can see just a little bit of surface mold. I'm gonna pump up my bug sprayer, adjust my tip, and spray a liberal amount on there. Again, a systematic approach. We're going around the whole unit from the top down, and we're spraying little areas where we see mold spores. Here are a couple of details that we like to incorporate into our siding. If you take the time before you start to go around and mark where all your studs are with a crayon or a keel, it'll make it a lot easier and faster to not have to think about that while you're nailing stuff off. This is a flashing behind the seams. Theoretically, there shouldn't ever be any seepage on the top half of the lap, but the bottom piece of the lap, if there was ever water behind there, we would want it to shed down. And we accomplish that with these bear skins. It's a proprietary product. You can also just staple up a piece of Tyvek or house wrap or even tar paper. But it's important to flash behind the seams, and then we'll also caulk those in and not quite have a seamless joint on these concrete lap siding butt joints, but they won't draw your eye to them. Here's a little trick of the trade to save some money. We use a 5/4 by 2 piece right here on the break. This building's 24 feet deep, and this concrete lap siding comes in 12-foot sticks. So by putting that sticker in the middle, we don't have any seams, we don't have any waste, we don't have any failure points after everything is caulked in to both sides. Normally you wouldn't have a big long blank wall on a house, but because these are 8 feet apart, we don't want to have shared wall space. The front ADU has a patio and a slider. This ADU, being the shady side of the building, we chose to put no windows for privacy, and that's a simple detail to make your siding go farther and also have less penetration points. Here's the window trim detail that we're using. Because this ADU is in the historic district, there were a couple of standards that we had to meet. One was a projecting sill. So we have this cedar prefabricated sill stock. Underneath the sill, we have a 5/4 by 4 apron. 5/4 is a full 1-inch product. A lot of times you'll hear dimensional lumber called by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 quarters. Each quarter is that of 1 inch. 5/4 is confusing because it's full 1 inch. Anyways, we have our apron, we have our sill, these are our case legs, and then we have our header stock. So we're using 5/4 by 6 header with a 2-inch overhang. It gives us a nice craftsman look. 5/4 by 4 legs. This prefabricated cedar sill that has a nice pre-cut drip edge. So as water comes off the windows or out of our weep holes, it comes down off this sill, hits the drip edge and falls straight down and doesn't seep back up against the house. There's a lot of different ways to trim out a window. This way is pretty simple, fairly affordable, and it's a nice clean look. Real quick, I'll go over the basics of hanging an exterior door. So first and foremost, we want to prep the hole properly. We want to make sure that we start with a level sill and, if possible, perfectly plumb jamb legs. The first thing I do is I check the sill underneath the door frame. We want it to be perfectly level. If the sill of our door is not level, it's gonna be hard to hang and we're never gonna get the door to close perfectly. I put a 1/2 inch riser down here underneath our adjustable sill plate. And what that does is it allows us plenty of room later for a entry mat. If you don't set your exterior door on a riser and you have a full thickness 3/4 inch hardwood floor like we're gonna have, you won't have room for a welcome mat. And when you open your front door, it'll catch on that mat, and there's nothing more annoying. So put a 1/2 inch riser down. We simply level the sill with a couple of shims, and then the next thing we want to do in our door is plumb the hinge side. So by plumbing the hinge side of the door and putting a couple tacks in it, what we'll have is a door that operates correctly. If the door isn't hung plumb, it'll either want to open or shut itself. So you'll hear me talk about plumb, level, and square often in a build, and that couldn't be more imperative on a door installation. So again, we level the sill. The next thing I do is I plumb the hinge side of the jamb. This jamb side is still loose, and what we're gonna do now is check out the cross sight. And the cross sight is how parallel the door closes to the jamb. So I like to stand out to the edge where I can sight this parallel line, and from there I'll be able to adjust this jamb in and out. And we want it to be plumb as well, but more importantly to plumb on this side, the closed side of the door, we want it to be parallel. So when the door shuts, it's perfectly snug against the weather stripping equally at the top and the bottom. That's a basic detail of how to install an exterior door. It'll get a similar trim detail to the windows. We'll do a 5/4 by 4 trim on the sides and a 5/4 by 6 header detail on the top. And then we use this 5/4 Z-flash. There won't be much chance for water to get in above these windows and doors here because it's on a porch. Here's the simple corner trim detail. It's just 5/4 by 4. Some people like to leave a 1/4 inch reveal. We go flush, and then I'll caulk that seam in and it'll pretty much disappear and look like one piece. You can also buy a prefabricated single piece corner, but they're quite a bit more expensive than just making your own. You often hear me talk about having the right mindset, the right instruction, and the right tools. These little gecko clips here that Reese is using take the guesswork away from setting the depth of our height on our lap siding. What do we got, Reese?
To the weather, 6 inches.
6 inches to the weather. 7 1/4 hardy lap siding. Here's something you don't see every day. The gutter guys just showed up. They've got this die trailer. They feed in a 14.5 inch piece of 20 gauge galvanized steel, and out comes a prefabricated 6 inch OG gutter. So we're putting gutters up right now. Right when the roof is on, obviously we painted the fascia before the roof went up. Now we can put gutters on so we're not getting all the rainwater, storm water splashing down the side of our building or making mud around the footprint. We're gonna put the gutters up right now. They're already pre-painted. We won't put the downspouts on so we don't have to mask around those. But I saw these guys here and I ran over and grabbed the tripod real quick to get it because it's such a unique tool. Here's the spools. And you can see the gutters are already up on this side. It's really easy to forget about your drainage. So one thing that we always plan when we're designing the layout of the house is where's the grade, where's the storm water gonna flow to. This back unit, the back ADU, has underground line that we went over in video 1 of the series that drains to daylight out the front side. So this is the downhill side of the property, and this is obviously where all the water is gonna drain to. Got a 34-foot single seamless piece of gutter behind us. The gutter guys just made that right off the trailer. They'll be here for a couple hours and we'll have rainwater control on both units.
Framers did a good job.
That's what we like to hear. So there's two ways to set your gutters. You can set them level and let them fill up and run to the drain side, or you can set them on a little bit of an angle. I prefer gutters to be hung on a nice level line. As they fill up, water will find the drain side. If you put them on an angle, sometimes it's really easy to see it, and it looks like the whole fascia or that roof line is not built right. So that's why I always choose to run them level. Siding got finished up on this side of the house today. Again, simple concrete lap. This is 7¼ inch hardy plank with a 6½ inch exposure. Custom prep for our downspout hole. Uses the spout funnel for a template, and then he'll use a metal hole saw bit and punch that through, and we'll be styling. So we're doing a belly band that you can see above the lap siding, and then we're stacking these shingle panels. These are a fiber product. They're made out of concrete, and they're gonna last forever. They love latex paint. Real quick, the difference between a shingle and a shake, that's a question I get often. A shingle is cut. A traditional cedar shingle would be cut on a saw, and a shake would be split. So a shake has a little bit more rough of a finish, kind of a more scallop look than a shingle, but that's the detail we're going with here. It's clean, it's affordable, it's simple, it's a nice little craftsman look. On the home stretch here, the front unit is completely sided, and we're working our way up the gable. Well, somebody's working. A couple of managers down here. Reese is finishing up the custom pieces underneath the windowsill here. We'll run up this rake, probably be done in the next hour, and go around the backside. They're setting it up so they're working in the shade at all times. When it comes to tools of the trade, we've got a Hardy blade here. This is a special blade that we put on a portable circular saw that cuts cement. It only has 3 teeth, and it's gonna last about 2 or 3 houses. If you use a standard 40 or 60 or 80 tooth carbide circular saw blade, this cement will eat that thing up, and oh man, a dozen cuts. Those blades are about 60 bucks. We nail these off with our coil nails, and then any spot that's a little bit proud, we hit with a angled 15 gauge pin nailer. That's what Reese is doing up underneath the eave. It's important that we have a 16-inch overhang. Some plans will call for a 12-inch overhang, and it's almost impossible to get a tool up there to nail off your gable trim or your shingles or your siding, whatever product you're using. That's why we go with a 16-inch minimum overhang. Anytime we have a flashing that comes into our siding or our trim, there's a custom detail. You can see here that that edge step flashing is cut and channeled out on an angle, and that's gonna direct water off of the building. If you don't do that special custom cut, water is gonna drain down, potentially behind your siding. Charles mounting the exterior mounted 200 amp all-in-one panel with the service line up through the eave. We're gonna do a boot flashing and a couple of guy wires. This is an awesome shot of something you don't get to see every day. This is the load center and the meter base. We like to use these exterior mount units because they're a little bit cheaper and they're convenient. They don't take up any space inside. Always, as promised, I share all costs. So I just got the lumberyard bill. It just showed up in the mail. I'm gonna open it up. So this includes everything to date that you see behind me as far as material except for windows. So this is framing, this is siding, all of our members, everything it took to construct these 2 units. 20,000, holy shnikes, $21,000 basically is what the bill is. So I'm just seeing this for the first time, a little bit of sticker shock, but we've come to expect higher prices in this market. Something to keep in mind, the $21,000 that we just spent for all the construction materials to construct these 2 units, minus the windows and the roofing, is still over $10,000 cheaper than it was just to get the permits and pay the system development fees. So it takes money to make money. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this video. As always, if you find value, you can like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next video in this series.